Well, hello there. So we're going to make a summer tote bag. Now this bag can be done on any loom with the right size yarn for it. Mostly people are probably going to be using a 3/4 inch loom, and you would use then the biggest snifty knitter with the bulky yarn. I'm going to be using a bigger, wider gauge loom than that because I got this loom made at Cindy Wood Looms. And it's a custom 1-inch loom gauge with 32 pegs. So it's a wider gauge than 3/4 inch, and it's a really nice loom. So if you ever have an extra bulky yarn, you can really whip up things quite fast. And I really like 1-inch gauge. Okay, so now the yarn I'm using is a number 6 yarn, and it is a blend of cotton. I guess I should read it. I thought I would remember. It's a blend of 40% cotton, 30% silk, 15% wool, and 15% polyamide. So here it is. And I had to roll it in a ball because it comes in a hank. So it's something that you do have to roll up, but worth it. It's the kind of yarn too, if you pull really, really hard on it, it would tear. So it's nothing you'd ever want to wind on a yarn winder. You would want to roll it into a ball by hand because a yarn winder will stretch a fragile yarn and make it weaker. So if you didn't know that, now you do. Okay, so the hook I'm using is a Cindy Wood ergonomic hook. Okay, so what you're going to do is on your loom, if you've got a 3/4 inch or a 1-inch gauge, if you did end up ordering this, Cindy Wood will definitely make up one for you if you need one. You would want to mark off 5 pegs on each side, and you want to be even. So because this is a 32 peg loom, I did 5 on each side, which would put 11 in between on each side evenly. But you just figure that out so these are directly across from each other. If your loom has uneven pegs, like the 41-inch loom, you're just going to end up with an extra peg on one of the sides. It won't be a very big deal at all. Okay, and then once you've done that, we can get started. So I've got my number. Now, whatever yarn you're using, this has absolutely no stretch to it. So, but you can use a yarn with some stretch, whatever you'd like. Okay, so I'm just going to do a slip knot and put that on the first peg, just like that. And then I'm going to put my loom hook down inside the loop and pull a strand of yarn through. And I have to be very delicate with this yarn, but it's worth it. It's a beautiful yarn, and on bags with the right stitch, it looks super, super good. Okay, so anyway, I pull out a loop, and then I'm going to go take the loop, go behind the next peg, put the working yarn through it, and just snug it up. Okay, just snug it up. And then put it behind the next peg, working yarn through, snug it up. And if you need the loop smaller or bigger, it's easy to do, but then you need to snug it up again. Okay, and then working yarn through and snug it up. And snug it up. And then you're going to just go all the way around the loom, casting on. Okay, so I'll just put you on pause and we'll meet up when we're almost all the way around the loom. Okay, so here I am. I'm getting close to the end. I go behind number 32 peg. And then I just put this one on this first peg. And then we're just going to knit that off And then this one off too. There we go. Okay, and then we're just going to go around in a U-wrap. And of course, I'm sure you know how to U-wrap. You just put the peg, or the yarn around like this and knit off. Okay. If you're able to knit really super loose, you can go over more pegs, which I often do, but if you're not, then you shouldn't. And with this yarn, it's not a good technique. Okay, so we're just going to go all the way around in U-wrap. And the stitch we're going to use is a 2-row pattern. So we'll be going around 1 row, and the other row will be the other stitch, the 2nd row. And the stitch we're going to use is called Dream Stitch. And I named it Dream Stitch because I thought it looked kind of dreamy. Okay, so now we start the first of the next stitch. And we're going to be doing 1 row of U-wrap and 1 row of my twisty stitch. That's Dream Stitch. So for twisty stitch, you knit over, and you're going to want to keep this pretty loose because it can get really tight on you, and then you're going to come back. So you did the U-wrap one way, you're going to come back the other way in a U-wrap on the same peg, knit it off, come around, and you're going to be nice and loose here. Okay, otherwise it'll tighten up on you. So knit off in a U-wrap, come back over, and knit it again. Okay, get a little close as I do this, but I do have a video on how to do the twisty stitch if you want to look at that. Okay, so we're going to go over in a U-wrap, knit it off. We're going to come back in a U-wrap the opposite direction, knit it off. Then from behind, we go in front of the next one in a U-wrap, knit it off, come back, knit it off. Now what that's going to do in the round, it looks really nice as a flat panel too, but what this is going to do, the Dream Stitch, is the row of twisty, which has the row of U-wrap in between it, is going to give a really nice texture to the stitch. Okay, so U-wrap, come back over. So it's a very easy stitch, and it's good for beginners. Okay, so over, and there we go. I'm doing it faster now, but just twisty goes very fast. So you're doing the U-wrap, knit it off, coming back, knitting it off the other way, keeping it nice and loose from behind, going in front of the next one, knitting it off, coming back the other way. Okay, so you can just kind of whip along with this stitch. It's not hard to do. Once you get your tension down, you can go very, very fast with it. And you'll know if you were too tight when you do your U-wrap row. So you can loosen it up then. Okay. So I'm just going to put you on pause. I'm almost at the end, but the video will get too long. Okay, I've come to the end of the row, and the last stitch is twisty stitch. Now when you're knitting and you're wondering where did I stop, where did I end, this is twisty stitch we've been doing. And with twisty stitch, you'll always see these couple of little pieces here, right? You can see that it was twisted just by looking at it. There's a piece there, there's a piece there, because you knit this way, and then you came back. Okay, so that's how you know you did twisty stitch. Now I'm going to do the U-wrap stitch here, and if it goes over nicely, that means I wasn't too tight. Now you can see, well, I'll do another one, then we'll look at it. It's another U-wrap, keeping it loose. But when you do the U-wrap, it doesn't look the same. Okay? And you can look at it from the back too when we get further along. But anyway, it's harder to see, it's harder to tell with this yarn because of the way the yarn is. Whoop. But see, it is a little bit tighter, so you want to make sure that you're loose enough. And I'm also at an awkward angle. There. That's better. So you're just going to do the U-wrap, okay? Having trouble here. I got to get this all at a better angle for me. But I have to keep it in the camera, so okay, this will work better. Yep, that works better for me. Just kind of trying to lean the wrong way there. So you're just going to do the U-wrap, and what we're going to do is do 2 more rows. So you're going to do the U-wrap and then the twisty. Okay, well, let's do the U-wrap and then 1 row of twisty, and I'll meet you up and I'll see if we've got a long enough base for what I want to do next. Okay, so finish this row of U-wrap, do another row of twisty, and then I'll meet you there at the beginning. Okay, so I have a total of 4 rows now. We cast on, we did a row of U-wrap, row of twisty stitch, row of U-wrap, row of twisty stitch, and I'm looking at how much I have here, and I think I would like to have 2 more. So another row of U-wrap and a row of twisty wrap. So you'll have a total of 6 rows, and then stop there and we will be doing the next step. Okay, so see you in a bit. Oh, I'm back. I just remembered I was going to show you how to loosen it up on the U-wrap if you were getting too tight. So if that should happen, you just knit over and then pull this out a little bit to loosen it, and it'll be loose when you go around with the twisty. Okay, so you can loosen it up if you start to get too tight. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, so I've got a total of 6 rows now, and you can start to see the pattern, but not, it's still stretched tight on the loom, but you have I can already see that there's some texture coming up in here, but you'll see it as we get further along. And okay, so now we're on the U-wrap row. This is row 7. Okay, so we're going to U-wrap the first one. Now what we're going to do with the 5 that we've marked is we're going to do a very loose basic bind off. Okay, so we are going to get a little bit closer to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is E-wrap the first peg and knit it off. Okay, then we're going to pull it up, and when we pull it up we can make a loop about that big. Okay, even bigger, maybe about that big, and then we're going to move it over to the next one. Okay, and then we're going to knit that off, and we're going to E-wrap it and knit that off, and then we're going to make the loop here nice and big again, put it on the next peg, and you might have to hold it because it's loose when you knit it over, but then you knit it over, and then you're going to loosely E-wrap it again and knit it. Okay, and then pull out the loop nice and big and put it on the next peg, keeping it loose, keeping it really loose, because it'll just look nicer here. Okay, and then you're going to E-wrap that, pull it out over to the next peg, nice and loose, and this is the last one right here with the marker on, and then E-wrap it, knit it off. Okay, and then just moving it to the next peg and knitting that off, and then we're done. And because we knit it off, we will end up with an extra wrap on this peg, or what we can also do is just take it and you put it on as if to purl, and then you just flip it over, and that moves your yarn under the peg, and then you can come over here and do your U-wrap. The only other way to do that would have been to come over here and do 2 knits, and then you would have had an extra knit here. So now this is off the loom, and this is going to be your handle right here. And that's why I wanted to have enough yarn to be a strong enough handle. Okay, so then we're just going to knit all the way till we get to the other 5 pegs, and we're going to do exactly the same bind off that we did here. Now I'm going to move out a little bit. There, make sure this stays in. So that's all we're going to do, and I'm almost there. So I'll just keep you there. Again, if you start to get too tight, all you do is pull that out to keep it loose. And that will keep it loose. I'm at a bad angle again, so let's move this for me. Actually, it's all a bad angle to keep it on here because it's not quite the way I do it to be easier when I'm alone, but it's the way to keep it in the camera, so we're just going to do that. Okay, so then we're going to come over here, do our loose E-wrap, knit it off, pull it out, move it to the next peg, keeping it nice and loose, and just knit it off, and then come over nice and loose and do an E-wrap again. Pull this out, nice big loop, over here, holding it really loose. Do another E-wrap, knit it off, bring it over here, knit it off, do an E-wrap, and knit it off. Over to the last one with the marker on, nice and loose. Make sure you're always putting this on and you're keeping it loose, and it's so loose it would just fall off, see? And you have to pretty much hold it on to knit it over. And then do your E-wrap, last E-wrap, bring it over. Now if you, and then we knit it off, but if you don't want to do what I showed you, doing the thing as if to purl, you can also lift this off, hold it, put the yarn behind it, and then put it back on. And that also moves the yarn behind. So that's the other way of doing it. Okay, you just want to move the yarn behind so you don't have a long strand. Okay, and then we just finish knitting off to the end. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do the twisty stitch here. Okay, and here we need to cast back on the loom. So what we're going to do to cast back on the loom is just put the hook under the peg, lift it up, and we're just going to cast on. Okay, same way we did before, casting back on with the loop, just the way we did at the beginning. And then we're just going to knit both these loops over. Okay, and then do the other part of the twisty stitch by just going back around this way. Okay, and then we twisty stitch to the next one, and we're going to cast on the same way. And then after that, it's going to be nice and easy because we have our handles made. And this shouldn't be anybody's first project, but it's an easy one for beginners to do to make a tote bag. Both stitches in here are very easy. And you just have to know how to cast on and bind off, which you're going to need to know. And see, I'm a little bit tight here. And remember, my yarn doesn't stretch at all. But it's mostly a bad angle. It's not really tight. Okay, so we're coming back up here, and we need to cast on again. So we do the twisty stitch here. Okay, now we're going to take the working yarn, rolling my ball there, and we're going to put the loom hook in, pull up a loop, and then all we have to do is cast back on. Remember, just using the loop and snugging it up. Bring that there, and then just knitting those two off. And there we go. And you can take a look at it now. There's our handles. And they're going to be there at the top of the bag. Right? They're just hand grips because it's a tote bag. Okay, so now we just finish off doing the twisty stitch, and then you just go right into stitch pattern. A row of U-wrap, a row of twisty stitch, a row of U-wrap, a row of twisty stitch, until you've worked your way to the length that you want your bag to be. And you get to choose how long you want your bag to be, any length that you want. This might be a good time to really look at the stitch a little bit more. We can see it more on the handle, but that's hard to see. I think we need to get more length and maybe get into a bit darker color. But there's the textured bits coming up on here. But you'll see it a lot more as we get further along. Okay, so I'm just going to put you on pause. We'll work for a little bit and get some more length and look at the pattern. Okay, so I think I've gone far enough around. You're starting to see the texture of the stitch in here. As it's loosening up here, you see it has texture and almost a little round pieces here. That. So as you get going along and it loosens up as it gets away from the loom, it's going to look prettier and prettier. Might be able to see a little bit more here because we got some more of the pink color here. But yeah, it's pretty tight up where the pink is. But still, you can see with the pink, it's starting to get the little... Just really like the look of this stitch in the round. And with this yarn. And there's our handles. As you can see, we're going to have some nice little handles to hang on to here. And we're getting more work starting to happen here where we cast on again. Okay, so you're just going to keep going, doing one row of twisty, one row of U-wrap. And with the twisty, and I'll just show you something here again, when you do the twisty, if you can be really loose with this, you can actually go even further over here when you knit it off, which will help you to be loose. If you can be, and when you pull it, it gets looser, see? When you actually do this, and you can pull it out so it gets pretty loose. So the looser you do it, the more texture you're going to have, and the easier it's going to be to knit it off. So, you know, you can pull it and keep it quite loose. So when you knit it off, this one now is going to be quite loose. So you come around, knit that off, and you can keep it quite loose, and that's how you get the really, really nice texture. Even here now where I'm doing it, you're starting to see that, you're starting to get the pattern start to appear here. Okay, so just keep going, and I showed you how to get both of the stitches loose to keep your work going really nice and really loose and easy and have better texture. And so now you just keep going in the stitch until you get the bag as long as you want it to be. And we'll catch up then, and we will finish it off. So I will see you then. Okay, well, here's the Dream Stitch tote bag, and here's what the stitch looks like now, and I've got it to where I'm ready to bind it off. And so to bind off now, all we need to do is I'm going to do a double drawstring bind off. It's Loomahat's double string bind off, and Loomahat is my friend Denise, and she gave me permission to do this, and so that's what we're going to do. And if you really want to, though, you could fold it flat and stitch it together at the bottom if that's what you'd like. I just want my bottom to be a little bit more rounded with this design. So what we're going to do is just wrap your yarn once around the loom, and then you can just cut it. And you're going to want to do this, you could do it on either of the stitches, but I think it's better to do it on the U-wrap row, and make sure that last row is really, really done loosely, just to make it easier for you to pick it up. And then just thread a needle. And there we go. Okay, and so I'm just going to start by picking up the first stitch like that, and then going behind the next stitch and picking up the stitch after that. So every second stitch we're going to pick up, and then just go behind and pick up the next stitch, and go behind, pick up the next stitch, and you're just going to do that all the way around, picking up every second stitch. Okay, and so I'll just meet you back when you've gotten all the way around and you've picked up every second stitch. Okay, so I'm almost all the way around, going behind this one and up this one. And then I'm going to go behind and go back up the first one that I did. Okay, and then I can just leave this loop down and take my loom hook, and then I'm just going to take off every one that I picked up. And so I got to start right here. I'm picking up only the ones that you've picked up, so every second one. And I'm doing this particular bind off because it will just make it a little bit flatter on the bottom so it sits better. And take away some of the bulk. Okay, and then the last one to take off is this one. It's got the yarn attached. And then you can sort of pull it and you'll see that this all starts coming in. I'm not going to pull it too much with this cotton yarn while it's still on the loom because this yarn does break very easy. Okay, and then you're going to take your yarn and because I have a Cindy Wood loom hook here, I'm just going to put this on here to hold it, but you can just leave it hanging down or hold it with your hands. And then I'm just going to put this around the loom too and cut it. Put my needle through it. Okay, now I'm just going to pick up the loops that are left. So I just pick it up, and now you can just go in front. You don't have to put anything behind. You're just going to pick up all the loops that are left on the loom, every second one. So again, I'll meet you back where we started. Okay, so I've gone all the way around and I'm just going to go into the one that I started with. And there we go. Okay, and now we're just going to take it right off the loom. Okay, and then we're off the loom. So now we just gently pull one of them and the other one, and we're just going to get this tightened up. Go. Then when we get it a bit pulled up, we're just going to turn it inside out. There we go. And we're going to keep pulling on the drawstrings. And just look and make sure that the bottom is looking good. And there it is. I always like to make sure before I start tying any knots anywhere that I got everything nice and tight and drawn in. There. Okay, now once that's done, you can just tie knots and things, and I'm just going to make these shorter just to make it easier. There we go. And then I'm just going to tie one of these to this one too. And see, like I say, it breaks easy. So there we go. That one broke. It's a yarn that breaks easy, but that's okay. It's my second knot. And there we go. And then you can just weave in your ends. Cut it a bit shorter. You can weave your ends in the bottom, which I'll do after. And then there's your bag. And what you want to do is stretch it out. Stretch out the stitches both ways. There we go. And there's your bag. There's your handles to carry it. And it's a nice tote bag. And you can make it bigger or smaller if you want a small tote bag for some reason. And I'm just going to use it to carry probably a towel and couple other little things just to bring to the beach. So there it is. And as you can see, the stitch is a nice textured kind of stitch. So okay, I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, bye.